Welcome back, friends. In today's video, I want to tell you something that happened to me a few months ago. Something I wasn't sure I should ever share publicly. This isn't a made-up story. It's a real experience that genuinely made me stop exploring abandoned places by myself. If you enjoy exploration stories and real horror, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. It really helps the channel out, and believe me, you're gonna want to stick around for this one. So this whole thing started in a tiny, almost forgotten village a few hours' drive from the city. I was there filming a different project, but you know how it is. You start talking to people, grabbing a drink at the local pub, and stories just start to flow. One night, an old man at the bar, his face all lines and shadows, brought up this house. An old house, he said, hidden deep in the forest that surrounds the village. It wasn't on any maps, and there were no official records of it ever existing. But the locals, they all knew, and they all told the same unsettling little riddle. If you go in during the afternoon, you come out at night. If you go in at night, we don't know. They'd say it and then just look away, like that was all the explanation needed. Of course, my curiosity was through the roof. A mystery house that messes with time? It sounded like the perfect adventure. So against my better judgment and against the very clear warnings from everyone I spoke to, I decided the next day I was going to find it, and I decided to go alone. That was my first mistake. The next morning I packed my gear: camera, flashlight, water, a small first aid kit, the usual stuff. An old woman at the guest house gave me a vague direction. Follow the deer trail until it disappears, then just keep walking toward the oldest oak tree you can see. The air was crisp and the sun was bright. For the first hour it felt like any other hike. The forest was alive with the sound of birds, insects, the wind rustling through the leaves. It was peaceful, but the deeper I went, the more that peace started to fade. The sounds slowly died out one by one. First, the birds went silent, then the insects, then even the wind seemed to stop, like the entire forest was holding its breath. The silence was so complete, it was deafening. All I could hear was the crunch of my own footsteps on the dry leaves. It was so quiet that I started to feel like I was being watched. At one point I stopped walking just to listen, and at that exact moment, the footsteps behind me stopped too. I froze. I hadn't even consciously registered them until they were gone, but they had been there, mimicking my own pace. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. There was nothing, just a long, empty trail of trees. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to rationalize it. An echo? An animal? Would you have kept going at that point? Seriously, let me know in the comments. I told myself I was just being paranoid, and I pushed on. After another hour of walking through that dead, silent forest, I saw it. The house. It was just there, in the middle of a small clearing, looking like it had been dropped out of the sky. It didn't look abandoned. Not really. It looked untouched. Too untouched. The wood wasn't rotting. The roof was intact, and the windows, they were all perfectly clean. Not a single crack. It was a simple two-story wooden house, but something about its perfect condition was more unsettling than if it had been a complete ruin. The front door was a deep, dark wood, and it was locked. Solid. I walked around the perimeter, checking the windows. They were all latched from the inside, but one on the back of the house, it was slightly ajar, just enough for me to slide it open and climb inside. The moment I dropped onto the floor, the smell hit me. Old wood and smoke. A recent fire. Like someone had been using the fireplace just a few hours ago. The air was still and heavy. The ground floor was one big room, a living area with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen corner, and a single wooden table in the center. On that table was a dirty plate with some crumbs on it, and next to it, a mug. I cautiously reached out and touched it. It was still warm. That's when the real primal fear kicked in. I wasn't alone. Someone was here, or had been, just moments ago. The sun was starting to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the room through the windows. The orange light made the dust particles in the air dance. I knew I should leave. Everything in my body was screaming at me to get out. But the explorer in me, the stupid, stubborn part, wanted to see the second floor. I started filming, narrating my thoughts to the camera, trying to keep myself calm. I took a slow step towards the staircase, and that's when I heard it. A single heavy footstep from directly above me. I froze, pointing my camera at the ceiling. Then another, slow, steady. Someone was walking around upstairs. My blood ran cold. I stood perfectly still, not daring to breathe. Then a voice echoed down from the dark hallway at the top of the stairs. It said, "You arrived too early." The voice. It was mine. It was my own voice, clear as day, speaking those words. I swear my heart stopped. Every hair on my body stood on end. If you're not subscribed yet, now might be the time. Because what comes next is the worst part of the entire experience. My camera was still rolling, and I just stood there, paralyzed by a fear I have never felt before or since. My first instinct was to run. I spun around and bolted for the back window I came through. It wouldn't budge. It was sealed shut, as if it had been nailed into the frame. Panic set in. I scrambled to the front door, rattling the handle, throwing my shoulder against it. Nothing. It was like trying to push through a solid wall of rock. I ran to every window on the ground floor, my fists banging against the glass, but they were all sealed tight. Looking out, it was no longer sunset. It was pitch black. An impossible, inky darkness with no moon, no stars, nothing. Just a void. That's when the footsteps upstairs started moving again. Faster this time, pacing back and forth. And the voice, my voice, started talking. It wasn't shouting. It was calm, conversational, and it was telling stories. It was telling stories about my life, things no one else knew. It talked about his scar on my left knee from when I was 7. It mentioned the name of my first pet. It whispered secrets I had never told another living soul. It was in my head. It was all around me. I was trapped. I don't know how much time passed in that house. It could have been hours. It could have been days. I lost all sense of time, huddled in a corner on the floor, listening to my own voice torment me from the floor above. The footsteps never stopped. The voice never stopped. I think I passed out at some point. The next thing I remember is a soft click. I looked up, and a thin line of daylight was creeping under the front door. The footsteps upstairs were gone. The voice was silent. I scrambled to my feet, my body aching, and pushed on the front door. It swung open without a sound. It was morning. The sun was shining. Birds were singing. I stumbled out of the doorway and turned around. The house was gone. The clearing was empty. There was no sign a building had ever stood there. I ran. I just ran, not looking back, until I broke through the trees and found the main road. Later, when I finally had the courage to review the footage from my camera, it was all there. The silent forest, the house, the warm mug. But the last few minutes of the recording were corrupted. The final clip that survived wasn't of me huddled in the corner. It was a shot of someone who looked identical to me, standing where I had been, staring directly into the camera lens with dead eyes, and saying in my voice, "If you see this, don't come back." So that's the story. That's why I don't explore alone anymore. I don't know what was in that house or what that thing was that looked like me. All I know is that I got out. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more real exploration stories. Leave a like if you stayed until the end. I really appreciate it. And tell me in the comments, do you think I left that forest alone? Thanks for watching. See you next time.